Welcome to the Orphans of Avraham Thursday night Torah discussion and chat. James the Idlesmaster at gmail.com. Check out John Gishla as well. He's got some good stuff and does some live shows here and there, and that's good to keep him on your notifications, because when you're able to catch him, which I caught one of your videos, John, was yesterday. It was the illusion of diaspora, which was brilliant. I thought that was really good. I watched it like you were doing the tail end of it. I had to rewatch it. It was really good. So anyway, we do this every Thursday night. If you'd like to join in, go to the Facebook page, the Orphans of Avraham, and we'll get a link to you every single week. We have a discussion, 2 hours generally, 7 p.m. Central, 8 Eastern. James, we've got Stephen, Aaron, and Yochanan in the room. Hangouts is going away later this year. Have you heard the news?
I have not heard this news.
It's going away. They're going to let the consumer in, what we have, stick around for a while until everybody's transitioned, but they're moving over to something called Google Meet and Google Chat, which will be premium. In other words, you have to buy it to use it. The future of what we do here is unknown.
Do you know if it's going to be one of these deals where they let you, like, you can pay whatever and then you can have up to 50 people join into the conversation, or is it going to be like an individual subscriber?
It'll be like a business. So yeah, you'll be able to pay, a monthly thing, I guess. They're not real clear on how that's going to be done right now. But yeah, you have to buy the suite. But it's streamlined. You can have a whole bunch of people. It's going to be nice, but it's also going to be for people who pay for it. What they're going to do for consumers, folks like us, we'll see how that goes. But the big shift is going to start this October, so we got a little while to look around and see what's available.
I have no problem with chipping in a couple of dollars if it means having a platform to be still on here. I have no problem with that, to be honest with you.
Me either. Not if it's not too much. We don't need much, but a great little public little. I mean, the great thing about what we do here is not only do we get 10 people, we can have 10 cameras, and it's on YouTube. The biggest,
As bad as YouTube is, and it's been leaked by Project Veritas that Google has manipulated the elections in favor of Hillary Clinton. Obviously, if Trump eats, Russian salad, it's Russian collusion. It's the end of the world, and that's the evil president. But if you have a multi-billion-dollar corporation who's literally admitting that they're swaying millions of people to vote for another person, that's not collusion. That's just that's just freedom, I guess. I don't know what that would be called.
Did you see the?
But yeah, what's going on? Sorry.
Did you see the leaked documents about where they called PragerU, Jordan Peterson, and Ben Shapiro Nazis?
Nazis, yeah.
With dog whistles.
It's that's the world we live in. People who wear yarmulkes on their heads are called Nazis. That it's an upside down world. It's a clown world. It literally, we live in a clown world, and it's like what that parsha that I was studying from, that you actually promoted. And I really appreciate you promoting the channel about illusion. The real world, the real world that we live in is literally a dream world. It's this upside down. And it's unfortunate that that's the way it is. And I also did a debate, James. I don't know if you saw it with a Black Hebrew Israelite and my friend James. That was a really good debate. I want to promote that as well, and hopefully he'll come on the show. I invited him in. He's a nice guy. And people of different, just because people have a different persuasion. If they're act civilized and they're good people and they have a good mind, that no problem socializing. So, couple of points there.
For the sake of heaven.
For the sake of heaven. So we have a lot of things happen in the news. Project Veritas exposing Google, but it's unfortunate. It's really the only platform there is for us. It is what it is. Um, you got to say something for that. They let it. This is great that we can come together and speak words of Torah on this platform.
Yeah, you can't hold them all. I don't know how many people got infiltrated, but they've been at this for a while, so it wouldn't surprise me. They have a couple of bad apples in there, and everybody's got bad apples. Everybody. Google's done a lot of good for a lot of people. I'm not going to deny that. Let's hope they clear this little incident up. And I know we were talking about, it's a clown world, it's an upside down world, but what about Israel as a nation, not the nation state necessarily, but the nation of Israel? When I say nation, like you would address the Cherokee Nation or the Miami Nation, okay? When it comes to the nation of Israel, can she have friends? Can we be friends to Israel? I mean, I say I'm a friend to Israel, but what does that mean to her? Does she benefit from my friendship at all? Should there be, should there be people, for some people, the going full on Jewish like you're doing, a Ger Tzaddik, you're a Ger Tzaddik. I know I say Ger Tzaddik. It comes out once in a while. I'm sorry. The 7's not enough. But does that make you any better or worse a man than your non-Jewish neighbor? Not you personally, John. I know you, but what we don't hear much about Israel's friends. No one ever really talks much about friendship with Israel, like you would a Quaker friendship, or like you would a good neighbor. A friendship, and like hey, I'm here. You're my neighbor, and I'm here to protect you. And doesn't mean anything to Israel. Is being a friend enough? You know what I'm saying? Now, Stephen, Donald, you were saying that there's no bigger friend to Israel than you.
That's correct. 100%.
You're not afraid.
No, and in truth, just speaking as myself, not as Donald Trump.
Right.
There's I got a call. There's lots of reasons to support Israel that are that go beyond just religion. A lot of times, like because I'm Christian, a lot of people think that Christians are only supporting Israel for religious reasons. That's really not it. There's a lot of secular reasons to support them that are also geostrategic national interest reasons. Some of those would be they have a liberal society where you can be a Jew, you can be a Muslim, you can be a Christian, you can be a Hindu, and you can live peacefully in Israel without fear of persecution, without any fear of religious persecution. And they're one of the only countries in that whole region that does that. And in the Muslim majority countries, they don't have that freedom of religion. That freedom that you can have in a society that's free to be able to. So, we're natural allies in our principles of having a liberal society like that, but also we're natural allies in a strategic geographic sense. And we're also allies in an economic sense. So these like the three big things: shared values, shared economy, shared strategic interests that just make us very natural friends. So on the religious side, I personally identify myself as, I know that you disagree with this, but I personally, see myself as a Jew grafted into the tree, as a Gentile. So of course I'm always going to support the Jews, even if they disagree with that theology.
Nice.
So there's both secular and religious reasons, from my perspective.
Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing the same thing. I mean, who am I? Because it's been brought up lately that, well, you'll be second class if you stay Ger. And I'm like, fine, give me second class. But I mean, that I kind of have to sit back and wonder, like, is that really how it is? I've never been treated as a second-class person, not by a rabbi anyway.
Mm-hmm.
No rabbi. I mean, it's just like there's a separation. You know, when you convert, you can ask John, you can ask Carla when she gets in here, if she gets in here, about the conversion efforts. And I know that apparently this might be seen as, or is implicated, that it's, we want to make sure we're getting the right people in here, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I get that. I understand that. But I wonder if there's any way maybe she has more friends than she knows, or she could have more friends than she knows. They don't have to go Jewish. They don't have to be full Jewish, but can she have, is Israel ready to have friends? America's been pretty good from what the Jews who've lived here told me. We haven't been too bad of a place for the Jews to live. They're gay in our land. They're as American as anybody. Don't get me wrong, but
It's the age-old question. I think it comes down to me personally. This is how I feel. It's like being friends with your boss. No matter how close you can get, no matter how buddy you think you may be, your boss is your boss. And you know the old saying, you don't go drinking with your boss. You don't go out having you don't go have a drink with your boss. And no matter how close we are, no matter how we think we support Israel, I think the best thing is that there is this separateness to it. You know what I mean? Because look at what goes on with Trump. There's a lot in Israel hating because of what Trump, who is probably the biggest supporter of Israel there is, especially after we had Obama for 8 years. But it just brings unnecessary spotlight. You get what I'm saying? I don't know if I'm saying it right. It brings unnecessary attention. You know what I mean? It's like, at least with Obama, you knew he was a Jew hater. You knew he hated Israel. That was one thing, right? But with Trump, he's gonna do the art of the deal. Maybe he'll sell half of Israel for a Palestinian peace. You don't know. You know what I'm saying? That's friends, or tricky like that.
Well, he does support a two-state solution, but of course, Palestine will never. Israel's actually offered a two-state solution to Palestine many times.
how many? Yeah,
With the precondition, of course, that they stop teaching their kids to murder random Jews.
Sure. Bill Clinton was like one day away from a two-state solution with the Accords, and Arafat, rejected the plan because he wanted extermination above all things.
Right. Yeah.
So,
how are you going to negotiate with somebody like that? It's just it's ridiculous.
Reasonable.
Yeah. Right. So it's kind of like I would say, if Palestine would lay down all their weapons today and stop, teaching their kids to, I think there's still like a $2,000 bounty if you stab a random Jew that they offer, something like that. But if they were to just lay down their weapons today, there would be peace. However, if Israel were to lay down all of their weapons today, it would be a freaking bloodbath. And anybody who doesn't understand that just doesn't understand the reality of the situation.
I just wanted to introduce my friend James here. He's an expert in the Hebrew. He does really good stuff. He has a really good channel breaking down the Hebrew, breaking down the prophets and what does it mean. He actually had the discussion with the Black Hebrew Israelite on my channel. Big 2-hour show. James, how you doing, man? What's up?
Shalom.
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 No, I'm just chilling. I just ate, a little peanut butter and jelly, kosher. And I seen the chat. Figured I'd jump in real quick, say hi.
Well, great. Let me put it to you. The theme, the question I'm asking everybody that comes in the room tonight: can Israel have friends? Can there be a friendship with Israel? Can a nation honestly be friends with Israel? I asked this. One of the reasons why I'm asking this is because it were the Jebusites who the King David went to and said, "We're going to build a temple and we need to build it here. I want to buy this land." And I forgot the king's name. Forgive me. And he says, "No, please take it." And David was insistent that he buy it. You know what I mean? There had to be a formality to it. He had to, pay for it to make sure.
You talking about when there was a plague because he counted everybody and then he had to go give a sacrifice and the guy was trying to just all right here just go do it. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, when he went to build the temple and when the king put his head down and bowed to Jacob after the purchase, Jacob said, "This will be the foundation stone on which the temple's built, right here."
Oh, okay, yeah.
But there was a formality, David. I mean, he gave it to him. "Here, friend, take, please." But David was like, he went that little extra effort to make it hard. So it was a hard sale. There was cash involved and a handshake. There was and so that's kind of the and when I look to Israel as a nation, not a nation state necessarily, can she have friends? Maybe now she can, but there's still a formality. What say you?
I mean, she should. If anybody would be reasonable, they would want to be friends with, the chosen people of Hashem. But we know that people's thinking is not rational. So I would have to say for a little bit, no. Until they're established as a kingdom and they have their Davidic ruler, in Torah's. Because right now Israel is a secular state. It holds the name Israel, but it's really just nothing but an empty shell. Because there's not a Davidic king ruling over Israel. Because Israel is not supposed to be a democracy. Israel is supposed to be a dictatorship. Like the Torah rules, and the king of Israel makes sure the Torah rules in Israel. You know what I mean? That's the way it's supposed to be ran. And we don't have the Beis HaMikdash right now. So I would say right now, no. Maybe in the future when things are the way that they're supposed to be, yes, Israel will have friends. In the kings of other nations, they'll bring tribute to Israel whenever things are set up the way they're supposed to be. But now I'd have to say no. We can't have friends yet till we're established.
See, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's just my humble opinion, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like I said, anybody with a rational mind would want to be friends with Israel, would want to, be friends with the Jew, because we all know at some point that the nations will come to the Jew and hold on to his talus, you know what I mean? And, teach us, because we know that God is with you and we have inherited lies. So anybody that reads, scripture knows this, but like I said, people are not rational. So,
yeah, I get that. I really do.
Yeah, and that's my take on it.
I'd like to hear Aaron's take. Aaron's still at work, I think. But Aaron, if you're listening, feel free to jump in anytime and give us your take on that. Because sometimes I wonder, am I robbing anybody? That's one of the reasons why I'm big on the ger. Is there's an actual place for the ger, even in diaspora. There's a ger in diaspora as well. So I can't get the full. I can't get the benefits of that legal title, but I would much rather be officially recognized. Okay, if I'm second class or whatever, that's fine. I know where I'm at, and I'd rather be second class in Israel than first class anywhere else. I feel like, in a way, I'm a king among men, or I'm a blessed man to be this close, to have rabbis who actually talk to me and teach me and welcome me. That's a blessing. If that makes me a second class dude, fine. I don't see it. I asked in Facebook on my page, what's more sacred, the priest or the layman? And I'm thinking I could get a good debate out of this, a good chin wagon. And Rebbe Rabs right there, Herschel Reamer, he says Rebbe Shimon provides the answer in the Mishnah in Avos 4:17. A layman with a good name trumps all. I guess with that alone, I kind of ran with it this week and thought I'm not second class. And if I am, then I don't feel it. I don't feel it.
You can't be a second class citizen. I mean, you're basically the son. You're basically the son of the king. You're a son of God. You're. I mean, how could anyone be anything other than that? You know, what are we talking about really here? I mean, you know,
The duties of the Israelite that are not incumbent upon others who might attach, who aren't ready to go that far, can't, or
even within Israel, even within the Israelite encampment, you know, you have the Cohen, you have the Levite, you have Israel. You know, there is a sort of a hierarchy. I mean, do we say Levites are second-class citizens to the Cohen? Are Israelites third-class citizens to the Cohen and to the Levite? I mean, what, you know what I mean? It's like, how do you exactly break it down? And then what do you say Noahide is like, what, even lower than that? I mean, to me, it's like distinctions. Yes, there's distinctions and there's barriers and there's like, you know, okay, this is where this is and we have categorizations and all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, we all encamp in the same encampment and we all travel with this, you know, what's a beautiful lesson about 2 weeks ago, we read about Miriam who had leprosy, and it said that she had to stay outside the camp for 7 days. And it says that the entire Israelite tribes, they didn't move on to the next destination without Miriam. They waited behind. Think about that. They waited behind for one person, one single person. They couldn't move. The entire people had to be one unit. So to me, it doesn't matter who you are. You're part of it, and we're not gonna go anywhere without you. No man left behind. That's it. No man left behind, James.
You're gonna get me all mushy here.
No matter what.
You keep talking like that, I'm gonna start weeping over here.
I mean, it's just like it says in the Torah, and James said it perfectly clear. I mean, it says in I don't remember which one. What is this Deuteronomy where the nations will gather onto the tzitzits of a yid and say, "Teach me, for we know that you are wise and holy nation." So that's the thing, you know. You're still attached. You're still holding on, and the chain is still there. You know what I mean? And then you have the opportunity for someone else to hold on to you.
So
God willing.
To me, it's like, So to me, it's like a work. You know, it's like a work relationship, right? You have these people that you work with, and you're friends with them at work, but you really don't connect on the intimate level that you do with like a close personal friend or your spouse. I don't think it so much falls on the Israelite, because like John was just saying that you're a son of God, so there is no real I'm above you, I'm below you kind of thing. But there's a Torah connection that when the Jews are intimately connected to the Torah, and that relationship, that husband and wife intimacy that goes on there, can be had by anybody that chooses it. But most times the non-Jews are in and out of it so much that they don't have the same immersion. So while there's a friendship that can be had, there is distinctions that aren't understood by the non-Jewish taker of it. And just like John was talking about with the Cohen and the Levite and the Israelite, and even within the Israelite, mamzers and all these different categories that they don't really go up and down. It's just how you interact with somebody, and it's all an interaction. It's all a dance that's going on with the Torah itself. And I think the non-Jews, they just get tired of the dance, and so they sit down for a little bit, and then when they're sitting over there and they see their friend Israel is still dancing, they kind of wonder, am I being left out of the dance? When they're kind of the ones, the non-Jews are the ones that they push away from the Torah. They draw themselves back into themselves. And I don't know, I think that's kind of how I see that friendship that goes on is, the Jews are constantly dancing with God's words. And just because you sit over on the bench doesn't mean they're throwing you out of the party. But when you're sitting on the bench, you always have that kind of, man, I wish I was able to dance.
Right.
But when you're sitting on the bench, you always have.
You got out.
All right. Yep. That's all right. Come on back when you can, Aaron.
And I just stepped out for a bit, so I missed the last 10 minutes or so. I apologize.
I was just getting it from James and Aaron. Takes on being friends with Israel.
Okay.
I wonder about it because I've been saying, we have when Rabbi Asher's in here especially, and there's a debate in like Ger versus Noahide versus full conversion. I believe in the as a non-Jew, I believe in the facilitation of conversion of anybody who you are there to support no matter what. Fully support it. It's like, you're the reason why I'm here. I always see it as such a battle thing, and I want to be friends. I would rather be a Ger than anything else. I would rather be called Ger than anything. But then again, I wonder, does anybody really want us around? Is Israel ready for friends? Maybe, maybe I think right now, yes might be a good answer too, because America has Americans, a good chunk of Americans are supportive, and I think on an instinctive level, it's a very genuine support, particularly from the evangelical Christians, a genuine, well, of course, who says different? Bible says so, I'll tell you what, and that's not a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I don't think that Israel would think it's a bad thing. Maybe now's when there need to be friends. Maybe, maybe now would be a good time. I don't want to open things up because I put this out there in public for a reason. I'll say the Noahide law is not enough, just because it's not, and I don't want to feel like I'm robbing Israel of the Torah, but it's there. It's so good. Anybody, it's the tree of life for anybody who wants to eat of it. It really is. I'm really here to promote that. And sometimes I have to stop and look at myself and say, am I the right person to be doing this? Is this right? I do this all the time. I'm never happy with anything I do anyway. All right, William, you just walked in. Shalom, shalom. Good to see you, sir. I want to put the question to you as I put to everybody who comes in the room here. When it comes to Israel and friends, the title of the hangout tonight, can Israel have friends? Should or shouldn't she have friends? And if so, what would be the relationship with her as a nation, like we would say Cherokee Nation, not the nation state necessarily? Can she, should she have friends right now? Is that possible? What say you?
I say she can. I say that, the relationship that the United States has with Israel right now is a pretty good one. And what was the third question?
No, yeah, should she, can she?
She should.
Yeah.
I think she should have friends.
What? Why would you say? Why would you? Is it because you want to be a friend, and you hope the friendship?
What do you mean by friends? By a nation friends, or
maybe the nation? Okay. We'll say the reason why I'm asking would be because of a formality that is there. There is a formality in Torah. And so there is, it's kind of like they are kind of a boss in a way, but, friendship, maybe like a society of friends, can she have friends at this point?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think I've ever asked that question. As far as them having friends, I'm trying to think of an example, maybe in the Torah where they
Right?
where they had friends.
We got a whole lot on the enemies, right? We always
Yeah.
hear about her enemies, and it's good to be aware of these things in the world right now. In my personal opinion, we should be very aware. More history, more 20th century history needs to be explored, certainly. Yeah, it's
something to think about. Yeah, I don't know. I can't. The only thing I think, and I think they turned out to be enemies when and they were family. Like, when you go in, ask for permission because this is your family or whatever, and I think they denied him entry anyway. I can't
Shalom,
remember
Carla.
what nation that was, but yeah. But I think no. I think I mean, outside of Torah, I think they should have friends. Why the Torah, as far as I can recall, we need a rabbi in here. But I can't think of an example. Can you think of an example where Israel had friends?
I brought up the Jebusites when King David went to ask when he was going to build the temple, and he went to the Jebusite king and said, "I need to build a temple right here." And the Jebusite king, I can't remember his name, said, "Take it, it's yours, you can have it." And he says, "No, I want to make this. I want to pay for it." David was insistent that it be paid for, that it be a formal transaction. See.
Oh yeah, and didn't that happen with Abraham also? Or
With the burial plot. That's right.
Yeah. There's an example right out of the Torah. So yeah.
There is a formality.
Yep. It's important to have friends, but it's also important to have, I guess you would say, a contract, because he paid for it, as did David, right?
Yes.
Because friendships can sour. They often do.
Excellent. Well, Carla, what say you? Question of the night. Can Israel have friends? We might have just answered it, but your take on Israel and friendship with Israel. Everyone, some people have the stickers on their MySpace and Facebook. I remember when it was real big, was "I stand with Israel," and people still have them, like a badge on their, but in all fairness and truth, can Israel have friends? Is she set apart differently as a nation? Carla? Well, all right then.
Her mic might not be working. When I first signed in, my mic wasn't working.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you. The boundaries are important. It's again, to kind of use that same analogy that I was using with the husband and wife that Israel has with God. Having friends is good. It's good to be able to appreciate, the relationship that you have on both levels, but there's just a different set of boundaries that comes into play.
And it's not for Israel's sake either. It's for his sake, for Hashem's sake. Israel was the last thing for me to accept. I could easily accept there was a God. I could easily accept that it was the Jewish God. I could easily accept the Torah was the word of God. What took the longest, and I guess I took the long way around, was accepting Israel as a nation, as my people. If I'm going to be reading their book, and this is this is the trick, and I've said this before. This is one of those tricks that that God has in the Torah. Okay, picture back in Torah times, back in the time of the wilderness, in Bamidbar, where we're at now. Okay, you got all these different gods everywhere, and usually a god was represented by its nationality. The Moabites had their god. The Peor had their god, or they had their, all these different societies had their gods, and Israel, it was a very national god. But when you read it, when the outsider comes to Israel and learns about their God, they find out it's their God too. I mean, what a catch, right? What a hook. Their God's the one that creates the universe. Their God is the one in which you are in whose image by which you're made. If I got that grammatically correct. That's a neat little trick,
So let me jump in though.
All right.
I'm not sure if I totally agree with their God, because I think it was Rashi that brought up that that's the reason that the Torah starts with Genesis, because God it's everyone's God. It's everyone's God first. Israel was chosen for a mission, right? To be a light to the rest. It's almost as though Hashem really cares about his other creations, right? Which he's Lord over as well. Because what Israel does is supposed to be a light so that the nations will recognize him. So, and I could be misunderstanding what you're saying. I don't want to misquote you in any kind of way, but I don't think it's just, merely their God.
True. Even I felt a closeness, and I was in no way Jewish. But it's I mean, even the way a lot of Christian folks see the Bible, I would almost say sometimes that they border on almost worshiping a different God, because the story is so convoluted in some sects. But then again, that's what makes it so accessible. So it's the formality. There is a formality, but it's not a personal formality with Israel. It's the formality because of God. It's not about being humble to Israel necessarily. It's about being humble before God. Okay. Now, getting into this week's Parsha. I brought this up before. There are a few other examples, but I want to get to this one. Okay. It's a shame that Ross isn't here, because we went off for a couple of hours one night during the afterglow after the live portion about something that Hashem says to Moses. This is, by the way, we're at chapter 13 in the book of Bamidbar, Numbers. So if you're following along at home, we're in, this is the portion of the Torah portion, Parsha. This week's Parsha is Shelach. This is, we break the Torah down into a year's worth of study. This particular section of the Torah is Shelach, and it starts in chapter 13 and it goes all the way to 16. So it's the 3 chapters here. What I'm getting at here is a little deeper in 13. Here it is. If you please, send forth men and let them spy out the land of Canaan that I gave to the children of Israel, that I give to the children of Israel. And they go in. And you have a public panic caused. This is about bearing false witness to some. But in 1333, no, I just read the whole, okay, Caleb, in reporting it says, we surely shall ascend and conquer it, for we can surely do it. In other words, he said, this is nothing. It's a piece of cake. We can take this land, no problem. But in verse 31, but the men who had ascended with them said, we cannot ascend to the people, for it is too strong for us. They brought forth to the children of Israel an evil report on the land they had spied out, saying, the land through which we have passed to spy it out is a land that devours its inhabitants. All the people that we saw in it were huge. There we saw the Nephilim, the sons of the giants among the Nephilim. We were like grasshoppers in our eyes, so we were in their eyes. The entire assembly raised up and issued its voice, and the people wept at night. All the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron, and the entire assembly said to them, if only we had died in the land of Egypt. Oi! Or if only we had died in this wilderness. Why is Hashem bringing us to this land to die by the sword? Our wives, our young children will be taken captive. Is it not better for us to return to Egypt? A public panic. We were like grasshoppers in our eyes, and so we were in their eyes. Do you get what they were saying? It's a shame we didn't have Freud back then, because that would be so illuminating, wouldn't it? There we saw Nephilim, or Rephilim is who it was. They were actually of the same race as the Nephilim. The sons of the giants from among the Nephilim. We were like grasshoppers in our eyes, and so we were in theirs. They didn't feel worthy. They felt intimidated. And that's why they were seen as being intimidated. That's just so key. That's just such a brilliant way of putting it. And this is what causes panic. Now consider how easily it's become in recent years to start a public panic. And the voice always comes, even on a collective social basis, comes from a voice or a train of thought, maybe, that says you are not worthy. You are grasshoppers in your own eyes. And they bring up Egypt. Why didn't I just stay in Egypt? They were already, at this point, they were already putting themselves in Egypt. Of all the wonders and miracles and gifts and lessons that God had given, it took this public panic from people, and it just shows how easily people are, much like the golden calf earlier in Exodus. It really shows how people are susceptible to that Satan, that adversary within you that says, who are you to ascend? And it's always ascend in Egypt. You'll notice that. Descending into Egypt, ascending into the land of Israel. Notice the language of Torah when you read it. That's really neat too. How easily it is. There's something still that holds people back, and it's pretty prevalent in the world today. I think we're not as bad as we were back then. Maybe I really honestly think today, especially I don't know anywhere else, but in my country, if the miracles Israel had seen happen now, you'd have a whole lot more believers than you might have had the first time he came. But nonetheless, I know he didn't come. It was his presence. Yada yada. I know. I don't want to speak ill there. But that's what Doreen Dotan, that's the real Satan, she would say. It's that part of you that says, who are you? Who are you to ascend? Who are you to elevate yourself? and it started a panic. They're murmuring against the prophets after everything that happened. Parting the Red Sea. I mean, that was enough. The showing up at Sinai, that was enough. I'm sold, okay? And yet we have this anyway. That's my favorite.
I heard somebody say once, it's a very good point, that is the whole point of the Torah, right? The whole point is that miracles aren't repeatable. So a miracle really is worthless because it's not repeatable. Like when they were being chased out, they weren't being chased out. They left, but then eventually here comes Pharaoh and he starts chasing them. And they get to the Red Sea and like there's no way. You got Pharaoh on one side, you got the Red Sea on the other side, they're stuck. And then boom, a miracle. Okay, that's great for Israel, but that's not going to work for me. Right? I can't just say, well, I'm going to just go this way and then a miracle is going to happen and bam, this is how it's all going to work out. So I believe that that's why Hashem gave us the Torah, because if you follow those guidelines, it's repeatable. It's like a formula for life, right? And if you follow that, then it's repeatable and it's supposed to bring you all the blessings, And if you don't, it'll bring you the curses, So to not get too long-winded, the Torah is something that is repeatable. It's a formula that's repeatable. Miracles are not.
And I would certainly add to all that and say, for me, when I read the Torah, that if it's just a bunch of stories about some things that happened, it, God forbid, it would have no meaning. I read these things and I look at it as a way to improve myself, to work on my land, which is my body, the way that I interact with the world around me, and to be able to apply all these things, just like that verse, that you're talking about. We see ourselves, we project ourselves in a certain way, and then therefore we are that. And if we just blow through some of these things and we don't spend the time to, really hone in on it and think about it, then I think we tend to miss a lot of what the Torah is, the words of God pouring out through these pages, not just to tell us a kindergarten tale, but to enact better life on the planet that we're given.
It's such a simple message, isn't it? He breathes life into Adam. That's pretty darn intimate. That's like on the molecular level. Okay? That's how, breath works. That works on the molecular level. That's how intimate.
We've had thousands of years of people writing thousands of letters about a very small book. And the fact that there's so much that can be drawn out of it, and not a bunch of hocus pocus. If you really, study what the rabbis have been saying, they didn't just pull it out of a hat. These are things that if you start to follow them, you can understand where they're coming from and how they're deriving what they're deriving, and then you can start to apply it into your own life, and it just becomes it becomes a part of you, and there's no escaping it.
You know, it's interesting. I've got my Stone edition here. I picked it up. It's on my table now. And the commentary below in the English, it says verses on chapter 14, verses 20 through 25. God forgives and decrees 40 years of wandering. And I thought that was very nice, interesting, nice. It was nice. God forgives. We often see, and we should see, 40 years of wandering was unnecessary if only we had the chutzpah. It's not even chutzpah. That's a positive. I should say the fearlessness. They didn't have the fearlessness at the time to go in, and it cost them, or it's kind of thought, and and I think it cost them 40 more years wandering when they could have gone in and had their land and gotten settled and gotten to work. And I just thought it was interesting, God says, I have forgiven because of your word, but as I live and the glory of Hashem shall fill the entire world, that all the men who have seen my glory and my signs that I performed in Egypt and in the wilderness, and I have and have tested me 10 times, and I have not heeded my voice. If they will see the land that I have sworn to give their forefathers, and all who anger me shall not see it, but my servant Caleb, because of a different spirit, was with him when he followed me wholeheartedly, I shall bring him to the land to which he came, and his offspring shall possess it. The Amalekite and the Canaanite dwell in the valley. Tomorrow, turn and journey toward the wilderness in the direction of the Sea of Reeds. We overlook the forgiveness thing, is what I'm saying. The 40 years was done out of love. We often say that it cost them, but when you read that little part there, there's forgiveness. And now I'm thinking of John. Now, see, my thoughts are going over to John here because he's really good about pulling the positive out of what we often perceive as a negative in Torah. And that was one I found on my own. I didn't need you, John. I always need you. Don't go away. Or wait a couple of minutes so I don't think it was because of something I said to you there. Something else in the Parsha I thought I'd bring up that struck me this week. Anybody have thoughts? Maybe something that's personally hit you from somewhere else in Judaism you want to share this week?
I think you said they weren't fearless. The thought that just popped in my head was is like they feared men more than they feared God.
Yes.
And fear of God is the beginning of all wisdom. And if they had just known at where their fears should actually lie, where their respect and admiration and love should actually be given, they wouldn't have ever had to go through all that. And so many people in this world go through so many things just because they're not focusing their love or their fear on the proper, or their admiration on the proper things or the proper person, which is God. And so they end up shooting themselves in the foot again and again and again and again when they don't even have to.
I mean, can you imagine the one guy in a family who got it and was ready to go and everybody else was griping? Even he would have tears by the end of the night. Just lamenting,
Am I coming in through clear? I'm trying to clean up my desktop. I'm trying to get it working again. I'm having little technical problems.
Crystal.
Okay, it's my webcam microphone, so it's not as good as my headset. But in a way, they did get what they wanted with the desert. Here's the positive side. They said they wanted to be with God, right? They didn't want to go on the land, right? But what happened? That's exactly what happened. They got to be with God another 40 years. The entire generation that left Egypt, they got exactly what they wanted. They got to be with God. And that's like, in the wilderness, what happened? God took care of them. God fed them manna from heaven. God, it says that their clothes never worn out. It's like, it's like You know, he fed them, he clothed them. There was a well that always provided wet water. There was you know, light, fire by day, fire cloud. What is it? A cloud by day, fire by night that protected them from the snakes and the scorpions. I mean, it's like living with mom. It's like living with daddy. It's like you know, it's like never wanting to grow up and get out of your parents' house. They had every. I mean, in a way, they got everything they wanted, didn't they? They got, you know, like mom washes my clothes every day. Mom,
Yep.
makes me my food every day. Daddy takes care of me. Um,
Oh,
and that's how I see the story. I see the wilderness as a sort of a spiritual place. I mean, it's a no man land. It doesn't belong to anyone. It's like you know, that's what they say. The Torah was given in the desert. Why? Is it because it has no ownership? You know, no one can claim it's theirs. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess it couldn't be I mean, it couldn't be actually implemented. You know, it says in this week's Torah portion, to get to the little Torah study for this week, in this week's Torah portion, it says that a man picked up sticks on Shabbos and he was stoned to death. He was, you know, he was killed for this. But it says that he did not want to desecrate Shabbos. He did it for a righteous cause, because when people heard that they weren't going in the Holy Land, and that they would be in the desert for 40 years, that there was no mitzvot to keep. The Torah didn't apply until they actually went to Israel. So they thought that, you know, they could do whatever they want in the desert. That it was Torah free. You know, well, I mean, I guess you would have to just be decent. You know, the 7 Noahide laws. But so this man, no one really knows who he is. Some say it's the father of the 4 daughters that needed that. You know, later on, when there's no son for inheritance, the daughters went to Moses and say, you know, please give us a portion of inheritance. Some say that it was him, the father, that died, and he did this to show that yes, the laws are still meant to be kept, whether you're in exile, whether you're in the desert, whether you're in Israel. It doesn't matter where you are. God is always with you, and Torah is always to be kept. So, I mean, this is just, you know, some thoughts that I had, opinions of this week's Torah portion. I don't know, just thoughts off the top of my head. Rambling.
John, you made me think of the movie Billy Madison. You ever seen it?
Oh, I love that movie. That's like one of the best. I mean, Adam Sandler puts out so much trash, but that's like one of the movies that he puts out is actually good.
Yeah, and the analogy he uses, like, you know, it's like a kid whose father has promised him this inheritance, but he just never grows up, and so he never gets to actually, you know, get the keys to the inheritance, as it were, get the keys to the promises that the father made him, you know, and so until Israel could grow up, and then even after Israel did go in and take the land that was promised to them, then they still went back and messed that up in later generations, you know. So it's a constant generational struggle, I think, of rebellion and reconciliation. And
right, that's why they're called the children of Israel. Until they entered the land, they became a nation of Israel.
Right.
I mean, that's another. I think even God Himself is saying that they were just like children. They were like, you know, people that never grew up. And you know, it's interesting. You know, it's interesting that a lot of the laws that has to do with actually growing up don't apply until you actually get to the land. Because when you think about it, what are the commandments that kick in once you get in, when you enter the land? You have to give taxes and tithings of your fruits and your first fruits, and you have to sow the crop, and you have to plant, and you have to till the soil. You actually have to like do work. You actually have to, you know, do actual. You know what I'm saying? Like get up 9 to 5 and actually like be a person.
You know, that also makes me think of another interesting analogy. It's telling me it might be kind of up, but I was sitting there thinking, like, during the American Revolution, after we won the American Revolution against the British kind of thought that, well, you know what, we'll just let them go, and their economy will collapse, and they'll come running back to the crown skirt, right? They'll come back to the queen and run under the queen's skirt again because they won't be able to handle their economy. And that almost happened. Like George Washington went bankrupt, and the original 13 colonies, they couldn't seem to handle their own country, right? And the whole thing almost fell apart, like really early on, but they did eventually figure it out. But it wasn't until they actually got control of that they had to learn how to figure this stuff out. You know, it's not until you actually get those promises that you believe you're entitled to by God. Once you get those promises that you think you're entitled to by God, we find the truth to be self-evident that all men are created equal, and things of that sort. Once you finally get it, and you say, "I'm not below this British crown. I'm not below," and we're then now you got to actually deal with that freedom, and that itself can be very, very difficult. So both for individuals and for countries,
Yeah, you got to take your own trash out. You're responsible for your own plumbing. I was liking it when I was listening to John. It was like, well, you're in, mom and dad take care of you. But even when you're in, when you move out, you get an apartment or dorm, and your plumbing's still taken care of. Your electricity gets taken care of. You have to pay a rent, but you're still basically living, and then when you get your own house, the holes in the walls, or whatever, your foundation, your plumbing, your electricity, all of that is yours. And it's yours, but it takes work. You got to mow your own lawn. You don't have a caretaker trimming the trees and weeding the bushes. So yeah, there's my gig.
So I see it as a little bit different. I see that, God was maybe he was like an overzealous father who, looks at his son and says, his son comes up and says, "Dad, I want to learn how to ride a bike." And he's like, "Hell yeah, I'm teaching you how to do wheelies. We're doing jumps, be prepared for a broken leg or two because it's going to be awesome." And then they go out and God realizes, wait a minute, they're not structured enough. They've been enslaved. They've had all these problems. I just blew their mind over the last year with all these miracles. They're not ready to go in and take on all those responsibilities. Let me take them through the wilderness and keep them close, and I'll teach them, and I'll destroy this generation, but not for the sake of destroying a generation, but for the sake of transforming those people into a people that can take on the land and not be thrown out from the land. Because we hear many, many times, right, that the land is holy and you can't do this in the land, and the land will vomit you out. And, so that land has a special sanctity that God established. And if you're not ready, it's gonna kill you. It's gonna throw you out. So, God forgives, and He takes away the death penalty. He could have just said, "Go ahead, go, run free," and they would have all just, been slaughtered, and we wouldn't have the glorious words of Torah, God forbid, today. So,
There's something interesting. In the commentary in the Stone edition, on verse 2 of the very opening of it, it says, when God says, Hashem spoke to Moses saying, "Send forth, if you please, and let them spy out the land of Canaan." Okay. The commentary here about "if you please," and this is an inside joke with me and Ross. Ross, if you're watching, you'll know why. He said, "If you don't mind, I'd like to read," and go, "Well, if you please," and because it goes back to this anyway. The implication is that God gave Moses permission to send spies, but left the decision upon him. In Deuteronomy 1:21 through 23, the Torah provides further information on the sequence of events leading up to the mission. As explained by the sages and Rashi in both chapters, the people come to Moses and ask him to dispatch spies to on a recon mission to Canaan. And my special needs 4-year-old is throwing a fit after. Forgive me. Okay, where was I? As explained by the sages and Rashi in both chapters, the people came to Moses and asked him to dispatch spies to reconnoiter. I don't know the word. That's an odd word. But to recon, it's a recon mission in Canaan, and report to them. Moses consulted God, who said, I have told them the land is good, but since they question me, I will let them test my veracity, and the risk of being misled and losing their chance to enter the land. Although Moses apparently approved the demand, he actually hoped that his agreement would dissuade the people from pressing their request. The sages offer a parable. Someone wants to buy a donkey, but says he must first test it. The seller enthusiastically agrees. May I take it to both mountains and valleys? Of course. Seeing that the seller is so confident of the animal's prowess, the buyer decides he has nothing to fear and forgoes the test. He buys the donkey, and the test is is very satisfied. So too, Moses thought that the willingness to let the people have their way would convince them that they had nothing to fear. He was mistaken. They wanted to hear about the land from their peers. So he sent spies.
Very good, very good.
Yeah, that's an interesting commentary. Never thought about it like that.
I mean, it's what he said to Moses at the burning bush. It's what, Moses has been saying to them. It's what God has Moses say is, I'm bringing you to a good land. The land of your forefathers, where you belong. But they needed, and who said it earlier? We're taking the word of men over God.
Hey, this thought just popped in my head, and not to change the subject or anything, going back to the Can You Be Friends? John, I'm sitting here in Redmond, Oregon. I'm about to hop in a truck this Monday and start traveling up and down the country. I will actually be up there in New York. How would you feel about going out and having a dinner with me or something like that?
I would love to meet you, Mr. President.
All right, that'd be great. I'll bring the Secret Service with me. And you can roll up the red carpet. No, I'm just kidding. That'll be fun. That'll be fun to me.
I would love to hang out with you for the day. Yeah, man.
All right. Yeah, I'll try and let you know like a week in advance when I'm planning on getting up to.
Well, I guess maybe I should drop the news now. I mean, it is kind of a big thing. I plan on. I got a ticket, and I'm planning on going back to my wife here in July. So.
Okay. Well, again, I'm going to be all over the country. So
that would be Brazil. Are you going to be driving down to Brazil?
No, I will not be going to Brazil. I will not be going to Brazil.
No road trip?
No road trip to Brazil. I'll be going Canada and the United States. So.
What when you think you're going to make it out? What's the time frame?
I'd probably be out there within a month. I'd be they send me west to east. And then when I get over to the east, then they usually send me up in the north. I don't know if I'll go to New York or up into Maine. I don't know if I'll necessarily go through New York. But it's flatbed, so it's construction materials that I'll be hauling.
I got you. Pretty cool.
And, yeah.
All right, yeah, shoot me a message. Maybe I'm still around.
All right, sounds good. Sorry, I didn't mean to switch the topic on you like that. Just the thought popped into my head, so.
Speaking of friends, it's a lot easier to pull the Israelite out of Egypt than it is to pull Egypt out of the Israelite. 40 years is a generation in the Torah. There had to be a generation born who didn't know slavery. It's very libertarian, the Torah is. It's very much about escaping slavery. And while it's not made perfectly clear, I don't think, in the written Torah, certainly halakha is excruciatingly lenient on their slaves. I mean, not lenient as in like, keeping Torah and doing what you have to do when you live in the land with the Jewish family. I'm not talking like that. I'm saying that to get out of slavery is stupidly easy. One way we studied when Rabbi Gab was doing classes, you put, if the master puts tefillin on his slave, the slave is freed. Welcome, Voice of Reason. Shalom, shalom. How you doing? Welcome to the Orphans of Avraham.
Shalom.
Hey, what's up? I'm doing well. I'm just currently taking a bit of a. I was actually invited here by John Gesala, I think you call is his name on Facebook. So I don't really know what this hangout is about. I'm actually currently watching the Democratic primary debates part 2. So.
How's it going?
I'm doing well. So
actually, I think I'm going to watch that too.
How's the debate going? Is it?
How's the debate going? Well, it just started, so I can't really say. But so far, they are basically lining up the false fucking questions of getting rid of people's insurance or whatever, that kind of stuff. So apparently they want to frame the question of single payer about getting rid of private insurers when in fact it's just having everyone covered under everything. And if you want to get like supplemental care for some like plastic surgery or like a very specific tooth removal or something like that, or some kind of tooth surgery like whitening or whatever for that, you could have like a private insurer for that. So it seems to be setting up the false fucking questions right off the bat, which isn't really all that surprising.
Any questions or notions about the Torah? You know what the Torah is?
Yeah, I'm aware of what the Torah is. I've actually studied the Bible specifically, not necessarily on a theological level, but more or less on a historical level. So,
right on.
I know that the Bible and the Torah are two different things, but the Torah is contained within the Bible, so I just mentioned in that regard.
Right. Yep. Biblical is an easy word to use. You just got to be careful how you use it, because then you could go off on a rabbit trail. For folks on our end, this is a weekly Thursday night. We do this every Thursday. It's a Torah discussion. It's an informal but serious discussion about all things Judaism, all things Torah. Not everybody here is Jewish. You got non-Jews, you got converting folks, you've got folks on the perimeter, you got folks, tuning in by shortwave radio. You get all kinds, folks who come in here. So, yeah, discussion tonight is, can Israel have friends? And anything in the Parsha, which would be a section of the Torah reading. What are your thoughts on Judaism, technically? I mean, just how does it strike you? The religion itself. If you had it on a shelf with all the other religions, and if there's one thing that stands out positive about Judaism, or negative if you want, what would you think it'd be? Because you seem like you'd have a much more unbiased opinion than us Torah junkies in here.
Well, I'll give my opinion briefly, though. I'm kind of expecting my brother to come in any second now. But basically, I view religion as all religions, non-stop by and large, as anthropological phenomenons in the realm of belief for mankind, really, because a lot of religions, by and large, sprung up as a means of creating social cohesion within groups, primarily as a means to deal with either out-group conflict, in-group conflict, or perhaps phenomenons that were happening within the world that they couldn't quite explain, really. So, and from my understanding of the history of how Judaism sort of came about from an archaeological and anthropological standpoint, it seems to have come about as a result of the Babylonian exile, to try to deal with and forge a sort of narrative of why exactly they were exiled. And over time, that sort of came about, and then it sort of formulated into what we would call Judaism after they had been returned, after the sort of exile ended, and they were allowed back there. And then they basically came back with a whole sort of new religion in the sense of henotheism and so forth. But as far as negative or positive, really, religions by and large serve the same net negative and net positive as every other one. Some might be more described as cults in a derogatory sense, simply because of how destructive they are. And in certain such cases, really, there's always going to be a sect of self-destructive, I guess you could say, believers or set of beliefs that people tend to have with regards to religion, or there are certain religious beliefs. I guess a primary example of that on the side of Judaism on both areas would have to be like the Jewish individuals within America specifically, or within other countries that pose various different forms of quote unquote theocracy. I guess you might call them secular Jews at any rate, who are Jewish in religion but really hold to a secular notion of politics, because they remember by and large that they were persecuted, or they remember their family history of being persecuted all throughout their lives. And then, of course, on the other end of the bad side, sorry about that, on the other end of the bad side, it would probably have to be theocrat Jews, which more or less seem to exist in any, and this sort of dynamic, I guess you could say, goes into any religion. But I only mention that primarily because I have a deep problem with theocracy and a very huge amount of respect for secularists, specifically those people who are conservative religious but also very secularist. There's a secular church, for example, a Christian church, in fact, right nearby my house, really, that sort of, the pastor is fairly conservative, but he's also fairly secular in his political beliefs.
Secular to me just means easy to talk to with anybody. A base level of humanity,
Yeah, I guess you could describe it in that fashion. I describe it more along the lines of political affirmations than anything else. Separation of church and state, freedom of speech.
Oh, right on. Well, yes, but it's a base level of. It's still a base level of. Who surprises me? Who was into anthropology was George Lucas.
Yeah, that surprised me.
How he
from Joseph Campbell. Sorry to interrupt you on that.
No, so yeah, Joseph was cool. No, he was big on man's relationship with technology, and you saw it in all his movies, really, and maybe to Willow, but it was how we interact with technology. Whether it's cruising with the automobile, a whole new way that mankind, would go out and mate. This relationship we have with technology, and and. It's something interesting. Next time you watch a George Lucas film, American Graffiti or THX or whatever, or Star Wars, yeah, he's real big on that, and that in studying the development of mankind in relationship to technology. He's a brilliant guy. Anyway, I like I like anthropology in relation to Judaism.
Yeah.
So nothing stands out about the religion itself to you then, or about the philosophy. That nothing would stand out any different to you in comparison with any other religion. Welcome back, Will.
I had a phone call. Sorry about that.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
Well, I haven't. Well, to answer the question real quick, I haven't really taken that much of a look at the theological standpoint when it comes to Judaism, because like beyond the historical development of how Judaism came about.
Sure.
It doesn't seem to stand out to any other development of how other religions more than likely came about, other than the fact that Judaism possibly developed as a form of, I guess you could say, group cohesion to deal with the exile. And I don't really know of any other religion that seems to have developed along those lines under that specific condition.
It's
beyond that, it's fairly.
It's actually pretty on spot, man. This was a law given to former slaves and misfits, I guess, of their civilization in a wilderness, giving them the means by which to take care of themselves so they would never be slaves again.
Oh, you're talking about the Exodus narrative, or
but the whole concept of it, the whole, the Torah stayed the same even when they were exiled. So the message of the thing, and I think that's exactly what. And after the Babylonian exile was the end of the prophets, and things changed. But the idea that it was there for social cohesion is like the base form of Judaism. I mean, we start our children, or Jews start their children, with Deuteronomy, not Genesis, because that's all the laws. That's all the civil laws. How to handle yourself in public. How to interact with your fellow man. If there is a theft, if there is a involuntary manslaughter, for instance, how do we handle this stuff righteously? Best way we can. That was the whole point of like a fat chunk of the Bible or the Torah, was social cohesion of these people. And it took a while, but they got there. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're spot on, man. And yeah, I can't think of another civilization that had quite the same experience either. Come to think about it.
Yeah, it is definitely unique in that development, but unfortunately, I got to bow out here real quick. I've got some things I need to do. Apparently, my dad wants me to fill up the ice maker, and my brother's probably going to come home any minute now and stuff like that. But I'll probably join you guys sometime on Thursday instead. All right?
Take care of business every Thursday right here, man. Be well.
All right. See you later.
Have a good time, man. Family, lots of love to the family. Not for me. I don't know him, but give him love anyway. Okay.
I missed a lot. What was he saying about Judaism developing? Did I misunderstand him? It's something about Judaism developing in the exile?
We were getting some folks in here who have different perspectives on things. I think we caught him at a bad time, but he came on in. And he might. I don't know if he didn't express a non-believer, but absolute love of secularism. But so I was asking him, well, what's your take on Judaism? What differs from that, in other religions? And he only took the Bible from, or pretty much, I don't know, he only, but what he took the Bible as was anthropomorphic or anthropology through an anthropologist. I just can't talk tonight. An anthropologist's perspective, and that's how he approached Judaism, the Jewish people, Israel, the story, yada yada. Okay. Sorry.
No, fine.
Which, to my understanding, is one of the theories, right? That the entirety of the Tanakh was written either during or right after the Babylonian exile. But the society themselves has been proven much further back. So it's a theory based on a lack of textual evidence prior to that.
They're not thinking all the way through. Well, how is this kingdom built? How is this Judea, for instance? How is this Israel? How is it? How did they get there in the first place? It all, yeah. And yes, they're correct. At the end of the age of prophets began the age of the rabbis, from what I've been told. Once the age of the prophets ended, a whole new form of Judaism had to take hold, because only a third of them came back to the land. Diaspora never truly ended for Israel as a whole. So that form of Judaism did end. Whatever was going on when we had that one temple built by Solomon, purchased by David, it was different. It had to change. It had to evolve. It had to adapt. And it wasn't that Judaism or Torah had to adapt, but how the Jewish people related to it in the world around them had to adapt. So he's kind of spot on the money in a lot of things. The Judaism we know of today wasn't the Judaism in Solomon's time. And if you want a good taste of what survived the Babylonian exile, you can look at, I think, personally, the things that have enlightened me are the Jews that settled in Yemen, and Persia and other places, and Beta Israel, which has a line dating back to Solomon himself. So it had to develop elsewhere. It had to change. So he's kind of spot on, but then again, how do you build a kingdom? Where did they come from? Oh, we haven't thought of that part yet. They were there before Babylon got there. There was a temple before Babylon was even an empire. Let's think this through now. And the more they dig in that land, the land of Palestine, in Israel, the more they dig and find stuff, the more they're finding, archaeological verifiable proof of the first temple period, what we like to call the first temple period, whatever, when the people deny even existed.
Well, I think even pre first temple, like, didn't they find something with Balaam's name on it, like some kind of altar to Balaam?
No way.
There's an art. Yeah, no. I'm serious.
Oh,
I saw this somewhere.
It was like 4 years ago, something like that.
Yeah. So I mean, that's pre first temple. Now, how in the world, something in Babylon, if it was all created in Babylon, I mean, how did they even know that this person existed? If it was all, dreamt up, I guess that's the secular thing, is that it was all dreamt up in Babylon. It was created in Babylon, this whole story. If that's true, I mean, then Babylon would have had to have records, going way, way, way back to the time of Balaam.
Welcome,
I
Wade.
think there's a lot of holes in that whole
There is.
theory.
They're not thinking it through.
Like they say, what is it? That it's textual criticism. And I think it's been debunked. Like where it says you have the Elohimist, you have the Hashemist.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you do when you come to a text that says Hashem Elohim? I mean, it's like, it doesn't make sense to me. Yeah.
Well, they don't think Jewish people. They don't think about the people. Nobody thinks about the Jewish people. That's the beauty of it. They're national. They're transgenerational, baby. They go back. They keep track. They know what's going on with their own history. Yeah, Solomon was dreamt up. The whole thing never happened, yet there's an entire civilization in Ethiopia that says otherwise. And they can trace their lineage back to the Queen of Sheba. Everybody knows the Queen of Sheba and Solomon hooked up. That's historical fact. But they want to take the text. Oh, we're just critiquing the text because you're not including the people. You're not including the rest of the story. What is it? The Holy Trinity? God, the Torah, and the Jewish people.
Even the Greeks. I mean, the Greeks wanted a copy of the Torah.
Heck yeah, they did. They love that. The Jewish children are still named Alexander for a reason. You know what I mean?
Right, and they recognized that it was an ancient document. So even the Greeks recognized it was an ancient document. Now here we are, far removed from that era, and we're trying to question the validity of it. When the nations before acknowledged it, and you have Israel's name. Didn't they find like Israel's name in Egypt on one of the inscriptions?
Well, isn't part of the
Come on, man. You're welcome.
isn't maybe part of the fuel for all that, or part of the problem, however you want to look at it, is that people take the story in the Bible and then everything has to be literal, and it's a literal worldwide flood, which goes against a bunch of science that's out there, and then you have to start going through all these hoops. And I think that at some point, a lot of people just go, we're just going to stick to textual, and then they disregard the history because they associate in their own mind, like, oh, well, the flood clearly wasn't true as a worldwide flood, so therefore the whole text after the record that we have doesn't exist, and it was just make believe that it's been transferred down. In other words, because there's a lot of people that are involved in Torah that, while you believe it literally, like, there's still science, there's still questions, there's still things that have to be legitimately, and honestly addressed to somebody who's coming to you and be like, well, how do you deal with, the grove of trees in Asia that's 10,000 years old? How do you account for that in your 6,000 year story?
Also, shalom, everyone.
So I'm with
Hey, what's going on, guys? I've been thinking about this. Uh, Knowledge is very important. And what you were just saying, some would say this, and we'll, have so many people believe them. And then you have other people who say that, and they'll have so many people believe them, and it's power, it's control. Uh, if you look at, if say a preacher, you remember when you used to go to church, you would see the preacher stand up on top there, and he would talk down to everyone, showing that authority. And he had that power, he had that strength over that people. He had information, he had knowledge, understanding, supposedly. And so many people after generations sat in that same pews all over the states and listened to this man and listened to other men like them. But what we got to be careful of, if we don't fall in that same thing with our knowledge and say, listen to us, listen to me, and have that power, that authority. I'm not saying where you're going is wrong. It's my point is, you may be careful. You may want to be careful of which way you're going and which way you're pushing, because you may have the power over other people. That's just my point. That's it.
Wouldn't that partially the beauty of Judaism is there's the diversity that's there, that it doesn't have to be one exact thing. I mean, there are some things that everybody agrees to and can't really change, but overall, there's such a wide variety of truth.
The thing is that people are looking for a Messiah, looking for someone to come down and say, this is it, or this is it. And I think the truth is there, and it's always been there. I'm not saying that the oral law is right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's this, or I'm not saying it's that. It's our job to look and search and to find. But that's the hard thing. There's so many different directions. Which way do you go? I say you start off with Torah and go from there, but a lot of people say a lot of things. I guess I'm not really giving a solution to the problem. I'm just making a point and a view of it.
Asher, wait, I've got the question of the evening. Okay, so I have to throw this at you guys. Everybody that comes in has to answer the question. Israel and Friends was the name of the hangout. That was the title I gave it. Can Israel as a nation, and when I say nation, like we would say a Cherokee nation, okay? And as a nation, not a nation state necessarily, but can Israel have friends? There seems to be a formality spoken of how Israel interacts with other nations, other peoples. But in the modern sense today, with Torah as the guide, of course, can Israel have friends? Should she, or can she, and if so, should she? And if so, how do we go about that? How do we look at that? Because there does seem to be a formality. Anybody wants to take that, go.
Nobody wants it, I'll take it.
Well, I mean, you get first dibs then. That's not. I've asked everybody else. I've put everybody else under the microscope. So you guys are next. So.
All right. So when you say Israel, you really mean two different things, right? Two things. Israel as a political entity, and this isn't post 1948. This existed from the time of Solomon, right? You know, when Israel existed as one apart, before it broke up into two kingdoms. They had political affiliations with other countries. Heck, King Solomon had a whole harem of wives.
Sure. Okay.
Like a whole harem and wives, based on these political relationships, right? On that basis, Israel could for sure have strong ties, friends, acquaintances, but that's completely a-religious, right? In a religious sense.
In a religious sense, I think is what I'm asking, probably.
Right. So in a religious sense, no. In a religious sense, we're not allowed to marry people who don't believe like we do. We're not supposed to really interact with people. We're not supposed to eat their food. We're not supposed to go to their parties, right? Unless we're trying to bring them over to our side, right? Whenever somebody says unity, I mean, it's the biggest fake cry out there, because whenever you say unity, we have to ask on whose terms, okay? If we all unite on the side of those who typically cry for unity in the political sphere, that would be aligning on left-wing values, right? You know, because if you want to align with the left, but you happen to think right, well, you're breaking the unity, right? So unity is a false term, okay? That we tolerate people. It's not that we respect other people's religions. We tolerate other people's religions. But ultimately, God the Torah has trained us to think that if you don't behave in an ethical manner, you cannot be part of us, right? And the Torah is that ethical standard, right? Now, clearly, I mean, some people behave ethically in spite of their belief system, but eventually their belief system, their philosophy will end up catching up with them, and they'll end up stabbing us in the back. This is why, I mean, although I think Christianity is a strong force for good, ultimately, people's philosophy, Christianity, ends up catching up with them, and they end up doing all the countless atrocities they've done throughout history. You know, because they'll have a period of peace, of prosperity, and then they'll fall back because, to quote their leader, they've built their castle on sand, right?
Gotcha.
So the answer is no. With this whole hippie movement in the Jewish world today, that we don't care what you believe, right? But just leave us alone. That you can believe what you want, right? And there's many different ways to get to heaven. That is not a Mishnaic, Talmudic, Torah belief. Okay, even like for those people who think that Jews do not proselytize and we don't really care about influencing the world theologically, right? Those people have missed the mark with the true teaching of the Noahide laws, because the Noahide laws is a form of proselytizing, right? And we're telling you that if we happen to conquer your land, if you don't accept these 7 laws of Noah, we put you to death, right? I mean, isn't that a form of proselytizing? If we tell you,
warning your enemy before you take their,
right?
Make peace.
So instead of offering the Noahide laws, why not offer Judaism? In other words, Judaism does proselytize even today. Jews for Judaism, Tovia Singer, all these guys who are out there destroying people's religions. Me. I mean, I admit that I proselytize. I'm talking about people who don't admit that they do it.
No,
right?
I mean,
those who push the Noahide laws proselytize as much as Ashkenazis pushes Judaism, right? You know, but they just don't preach what they practice. But they preach something else, which only builds resentment later on. Because once a person does, become this religion and keeps on seeing that their teachers just look down on them, you know, as really someone second class with a relationship their teacher experiences with the Almighty is not good enough for them. That builds resentment, and that's the birth of Christianity. This is why with the Gentiles in the Christian world grew so big that they started persecuting the Torah-keeping Nazarenes of earlier times. So even those who cry for unity, because that's the biggest attack on me, who actively proselytizes, that you're building like resentment amongst Gentiles. Judaism is not for proselytizing and trying to convince people to believe differently. If you're pushing the Noahide laws, you might as well be proselytizing Judaism. And it's even worse because once the Gentile actually knows what these laws actually teach, then they're going to begin to hate you, because they're thinking like, you're offering me a system that puts me to death for stealing a penny. It says that you're put to death for stealing something worth less than a shova pruta, like a Roman coin. It's like a penny.
Right.
So even those who cry for unity and say like, oh, we all get along, like anyone who's seen the Chabad telethon saying, oh, you know, like we're here to push a universal belief in one God, right? Of course, they're not going to tell you that. I mean, Chabad is the biggest proponent for labeling Christianity as idolatry amongst the nations, right? But they're not going to tell you that. And they're not going to tell you that according to this system of 7 laws, if you believe in Jesus, if there was a court, you'd be decapitated. Saying this is what the law is.
Right.
You know, so even those who cry for unity are really feeding you a bunch of nonsense.
Courtney's asking in the side chat here, you know, what did she miss? And I've given this to everybody. Wade, you're up to whenever you want. The question, Courtney, and anybody who comes in the room is asked tonight, before we go off the air, I just got to get everybody in. Can Israel have friends? Should she have friends? Are you a friend? Would you, you know, I would wonder about the friend thing myself. I think there is a formality, but in your book, it's the question of the evening. So what say you?
I say that it speaks about a future that those that are still nations will all come to Israel if they want water on their land. But as in right now, if the Jewish people, I believe if the Orthodox would take over the temple and get cleanse the temple and everything else, is that it'd probably be a long time before Gentiles would be allowed back in.
Yeah, well, Gentiles were never allowed into the temple, at least all the way through.
Yeah, right. I'm speaking as in Jerusalem and things.
No, but in terms of the law, I think Gentiles were only allowed up to the Ezras Nashim, or the Hazara, the court. There was a court that Gentiles could walk up to, but they couldn't go all the way up to the Mizbeach, the first altar, yeah, so this whole thing of, you know, like Gentiles in some way like traversing like through the temple, you know, wrapped in a rainbow flag, is also a lot of nonsense pushed by these you know, hippie rabbis who don't know the actual law.
That's I don't feel bad. That's laughable.
So there's a Noahide Talit. You ever seen the Noahide Talit before?
I know some folks who actually went to Jerusalem and offered an idea, and they weren't exactly through. They were. I honestly, if I could put it into a thumbnail description of what I remember, it was flattering, appreciated, not allowed.
Right. So the Noahide Talit that I've seen, I remember there was this guy who used to teach on my show. I used to have a website called eyeshiva.com, and I used to give lectures there. We had a Noahide hour. His name was Roger Granite. Granite? You heard of him?
Never heard of him.
He was ordained as a judge by the new Sanhedrin, a judge for Noahides. So,
Okay.
anyways,
Was he Jewish?
no, he's a Noahide. He's
What the heck? What's the point of that? Why you? We don't come. All right.
No, because it says that I don't remember where it says it, that it's with the Sanhedrin that appoints, or it's Jewish judges that appoint almost like Gentile Gestapo to police their own people.
Okay.
Like in Dinim. But anyways, the Noahide talit was a talit without tzitzits on it, right? So it was blue and it had like a rainbow going across it, and it didn't have like talitot on it, but it just had rounded corners. Not that, like, even if it had like pointed corners, it wouldn't make any sense anyways.
These folks went to actual Israel and asked permission. They sewed it at home and made it, and actually went and asked for permission, and it had tzitzit.
It doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. It's like when you see these plus size,
like 20 years ago too, mind you.
Plus size like mannequins in a convenience store, right?
Right.
Right, and they have like the plus size mannequin wearing like yoga pants and like workout gear. Right? It's kind of like the whole system's broken. It's like you're wearing that gear. Well, so the ideal is to be thin, right? So you're asking these rabbis to give you permission to make a talit because the ideal is to be Jewish. Well, anyways,
Carla's back. Carla, can you speak?
Yeah, sorry, I had a screaming kid with me.
No problem. I had one of those too. I had a door though, fortunately. In your experience, even, which is rather unique to a lot of folks in here, what do you think? And we addressed this, but from your perspective personally, if someone were to ask you, can Israel have a friend? Can one be a friend to Israel? On a much more religious sense, we could bring up this nation state, sure, but as a nation itself, can Israel really have any friends? If so, should they have friends? Can they? If so, and if they should, how do we do that? If it's possible, what say you? Courtney, you're up next.
I would hope that it was possible, but the way it looks now, I don't think it's possible with other groups thinking that they're superior. How can you be a friend to someone if you think that you're superior to them?
True. Are there any on that note? Could there be a friend out there, maybe? Or would it just have to be kind of like just a friendly neighbor kind of a thing? Is it could there? Is it possible for there? I mean, so some you say no, but
yeah, I would hope that, like I said, I hope that there is. But I mean, even with secularists, they think that their way of believing is better than religion. So it's like, that you take most of the other religions. I'm not so familiar with Hinduism or Buddhism, so I can't really speak to those. But of all the religions that I know of, beyond those, they think that they're superior and everyone's goal should be to be them. So they're not really your friend if they think that they're better than you. So I don't think so.
That makes sense.
Yep. Courtney, any ideas you want to share?
Well, I didn't really hear what she said, so maybe can someone tell me?
It's difficult. Well, when you have so many people who aren't willing to meet you eye to eye, but rather look down their nose at you. How can Israel be friends with, say, the secularists who have a lot of folks out there with a lot of vocal power amongst the masses, tend to think that their message is superior to that of anybody else, not one that is worthy of, you know what I'm saying? That they think they're better. They think they're superior. How can you be friends with people like that? That's what Carla was bringing up. I'm not Jewish myself. I would hope to be called a friend to Israel, but that's only because of a passion for Torah and God. I mean, I I would hope to be friends. I would hope that they would trust me to guard their wine with my life. You know what I mean? But that's just me. I'm a romantic in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I guess
Go ahead.
I guess I still don't understand that perspective that you have, because in my understanding of Torah, you would be considered in covenant with God, and therefore, I mean, I know not halakhically Jewish, but technically Jewish.
I think the law is that if you do guard their wine, even as a no-eyed, it's still undrinkable.
What?
Yeah.
Now that I haven't heard.
Of course. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's
if I
the
touch
law,
your wine, if I touch it.
No, like even if you're alone with it.
For a long period of time.
So then how do you guard something for like just a quick minute? Like, I got you, man, for just a quick minute.
Pretty much.
It's because you're alone. Like, you're most likely gonna. The suspicion is whether you're gonna offer libations to your idol. You're just like, you're not allowed to leave your animals alone with the Gentile, because Gentiles have the reputation of bestiality. Now, that's the real Talmud says. So so even if you're no-eyed, you're not trusted. I mean, why would you want to trust someone who knows the truth and chooses to live a life of debauchery?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. I'm still not sure why you choose that label for yourself.
Oh, don't start.
Because I'm not Jewish, because my family is not Jewish.
Okay.
They aren't Jews. They aren't going to be making Jewish babies. Now, I know where I stand with my friends and in Israel, my personal people. If I were in Israel today, I most likely, in fact, I'm thinking about doing it now just to make it official and get people off my back, and go before a bet den and have them grill me. Are you going to keep 7 laws? Do you promise? Are you doing it for his sake? Absolutely, yes. God means more to me, as much to me, and as much as Torah, the Jewish people. They're a part of the package. So because I'm not taking that, and my family, I'm not converting my family. I'm not circumcising myself and my son so that I may partake in the Passover. I would hope that my love of God and them, for that reason, for his reason. And, I didn't choose Jews. They just kind of came along with the package. And that was I was saying that earlier in the hangout, that was the last thing I had to accept. And I couldn't accept them for the longest time. Got God, easy. Got God with man, easy. Got Torah, easy. Love the Torah. I didn't get the Jews. I didn't get Israel as a nation, and why I have to politically, as Asher was saying, there's a 2-part, and I never thought of it like that, which is freaking brilliant. But of course, you're the rabbi. But I have to politically say, yes, I stand with Israel. I in my heart of hearts, I know where I have to draw a line and say, am I in Goyville? Am I in Israel? In the very end of it, I'm going to be on that Israel side. If they push me out, fuck them. That's their lookout. They slayed an enemy. Or they slayed an ally. Excuse me. They made an enemy out of an ally. If they do that, I don't think it's going to happen. It's never happened to me personally. I've never been kicked out of a synagogue. I've never been kicked out of a class.
But Jews do prefer their heroes dead.
Wow. Well, if you slay me, you slay an ally, and that's your lookout. I know where I stand, and when I go before God, he and I will know what happened. But if you consider me an enemy to you, I don't care if I'm second class. I'll take that. I understand why. I'm not a priest. I'm not becoming a nation of priests and kings. It's not my bloodline. It's not in the cards for me this lifetime. It's just not going to happen. But I know where I stand. I know my Creator. I know what's true. And if I can't keep all the Torah, I will defend those who do, to make sure that it is kept.
Okay. My question though is, you say you love God. Do you know, and I'm not trying to quiz you, but do you know the definition of loving God in the scriptures?
Well, giving more of yourself than you receive.
No, it's keeping the commands. Psalm 119.
Okay. Well then,
yeah, the actual literal definition. If we're just gonna go by what the scripture says, Psalm 119, 9 through 11, it
Sure.
says that the definition is of loving God is keeping the command. So it's the same argument I would have with a Christian. Those who say they love God and do not keep the commands is a liar, and the truth is not in them, so on and so forth. So the point that I'm trying to make is, if you have this love for God, why not keep his commands?
I do keep his commands.
No, like Torah, not just the Noahide that the rabbis say you should keep.
Preach. Preach.
Why would I not? I mean, why would I keep commands that are not incumbent upon me?
But if you join yourself
wait a
with the God
second.
of Israel,
I have not taken an oath to keep every Torah law.
So then, am I understanding you correctly?
I don't have to. I'm not required to.
Okay, so am I understanding you correctly that you want to have the blessings of God?
I understand that I won't get the blessings that Israel has, and I'm fine with that.
Okay, so you're fine being mediocre.
If you want to call me mediocre, that's your fucking problem.
I'm not saying that you are. I'm saying
that's what they tell everybody. They give that to everybody. You're second class. I'm second class to no one until Mashiach comes. So, and you and anybody else, you gotta realize, man, I'm not any less, man. Don't put that on me. I don't get the blessings that Israel does. I don't live in the land. I can't eat those monstrous grapes that grow there. But that's okay, because I'm blessed with what I'm given. I can find God where I am now. I don't need to be a priest. I don't need to join the nation of kings and priests to know my Creator. I'm not required to join the nation of kings and priests to keep the commandments that are incumbent upon me when I enter the land, which are the 7 Noahide law. That's what it is. It's in the Talmud. That's it. Base. I have to do that at least. They can't rest me. I can't be rested. There's no command that says the ger must rest. Ger, you rest. No, he tells Israel, rest your ger. Well, there's no way for Israel to do that right now. They're in no position to keep all the Torah themselves. So how can I? They can't rest me. They can't enforce that on me. They can't decapitate me for flipping a light switch or starting a car. So why should I take it upon myself not to start a car in the situation that I'm in? I'm in no way a second class to anybody. Sorry, I don't buy it. I
don't think she was. I don't think she was actually saying that you were second class, man. She was making a point. If you love God, if you love God, you want to please God by keeping His commandments.
That's right. But I'm not a Jew, so why would I keep Jewish commandments?
I don't think it's really about the Jewish thing. I think the point is that if you're out in the world and you hear about a God and you say, wow, I really like to know that God, and then you find out things that is special to Him and say, okay, I'd like to do this to know this God, so maybe He will look down upon me and see me, and I will do things to serve Him the best I can and start that relationship.
I can do that.
And it won't be about you being Jewish. It's because you were born in God's image.
True.
I think we all were. We all start there.
But Israel is a special nation with a special.
I didn't say there wasn't, but Abraham, it was told Abraham that many nations would be blessed because of him.
Sure.
So all right then. You want to know God, know God. I'm a man. I'm not second class. I'm just not Jewish.
Yeah, me too.
And the actual literal definition, according to rabbis, this isn't just me, but according to rabbis, that the passage where he says, I will bless those who bless you, and he says that through you as in Abraham, all the nations will be blessed. That means grafted in. The word neverku means grafted.
Actually, it does. It really does.
So if you technically read that literally,
Nova.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
That's the Hebrew word. Those who attach are Nova. I was just throwing that out there. I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
No, I'm not like trying to I understand you're passionate about who you are and where you're at and the positions you're in and things like that. I'm just saying, you have the ability, if you choose, to be considered in God's eyes just as glorious as Israel. He created Israel, like he formed Israel for his glory. Isaiah 42, maybe it's 42 or 43. Anyway. And so anybody that grafts into Israel, and you don't have to be by blood. That's the intent of grafting in. And I know this sounds like a New Testament concept. It's really not. The New Testament just really expounds on that a lot. But if you look at just what it says, that through you, all the nations, not some, not the Philistine, not all the nations will be blessed, aka grafted in. So you have the ability to be grafted in and not according to what a rabbi says. Now, if you personally just want to follow the rabbis, then I'm not trying to get you to like cuss at me, but like they are going to look at you as a second class citizen until you physically convert rabbinically.
They won't look at me as something different, but there is the ger amongst Israel. There is a
which ger? There's two different types. There's the ger that
it doesn't matter. That's the stranger.
No, it does matter.
Children aren't circumcised. In that passage about the Passover, so you have to circumcise their children. Well, if their children aren't circumcised, who are these people? They're not Jewish, but they're there. They're allowed to take part if they go through this.
Okay, can I ask you a question? Would you eat something? Would you eat something that died of its own? Like,
well, fortunately,
Israel is not allowed to eat meat that died of its own.
I don't think that God would punish me if I did.
Okay, so do you think it's permissible for a ger to eat meat that died of its own?
Yes, I think it's permissible for a Noahide, for any man.
Noahide or a ger?
Any man. I think that's permissible for any man. For survival, if that's all you got.
Okay, so we're not talking about survival. Like, let's say you walk along the street and a guy says, yo, I found this. A Jewish man comes up to you and he says, hey, I found this meat. It died of its own. Do you want it?
No.
You probably would eat it because
if a priest came up to me, if a Cohen came up to me or a Levite and said, look, the animal jerked and the slaughter wasn't perfect. Would you like this meat? I would say yes. And I'd have a cow. I would have a ox right there.
That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking.
But it's the same law.
No, it's not. If an animal dies on its own, like sick, or you just don't know the reason, you just walk outside, the animal's standing straight up, you walk outside and all of a sudden, poof, it hits the ground. You walk over and you're like, okay, what happened?
Right.
That meat can be sold to a ger.
No, it's given to the ger, sold to the nochri.
Right, exactly. So in other words,
you don't charge the ger. So there's a differentiation between a foreigner to Israel and one who's with them. That's all that law. That's the only thing I ever used that law for. Is it the distinct differentiation that he's not Jewish, but he's not a foreigner.
Right, but the Exodus 12 ger, which is theoretically it's a conversion chapter, the Exodus 12 ger is circumcising. He is not allowed to partake of Passover until he's circumcised.
He doesn't say the no-Creek can circumcise his children. He says the ger can. Okay, so there's still a distinction. And he will be as one with the nation. After he circumcises, he will be as one.
Yeah, one law for the.
That means he's no longer at that point included in the part that said love your ger. He's not a ger anymore.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's my point. That's my entire point. That's why I said it's a conversion chapter. When people say there's no conversion in the Bible, there is. Exodus 12.
Sure. Yeah, but all the other 30 some odd times that it's brought up, it's a stranger in a strange land, and I'm not in a position where I can become a priest to the nations. I will be a friend of the priest. I go to the priest for Torah. I listen to the priest. I take heed the word of the priest, and I live my life accordingly. What good are the priests without people like me anyway?
Well, the priests are there for Israel as well.
I'm saying Israel is a nation of kings and priests. So if I look at them as an aristocracy in this, on a political level, I don't want them, but I know for a fact that my rabbi could trust me not to bring his wine to an idol. He can trust. I can guarantee you. I know 3 rabbis personally that could vouch for me that I will not be drinking their wine to an idol, and they could leave it with me all freaking day, and they can still drink it. I can guarantee you that.
So can I ask if Mashiach, when Mashiach comes,
mm-hmm.
how do you do you see yourself just
Now,
be
this I did tell the wife. Now, when I married the wife, it was 7 laws. Okay. And that was it. And she's Catholic. So that was a step for her, and it's been a step for me too. But I said, when Mashiach comes, we're going to Israel. End of story. That's what's going to happen. And if you want, you know, the world's going to be judged. We're going to Israel. So when Mashiach comes, yeah, you're going to see me holding on to the seat of a Jew. You will see me with bells on. Can I bring bells? That's what Americans do. That's what I will be. That's where I will be. I know where I'm going. My first rabbi, that's what he told me. You're a Ger Toshav. You're with us now. You don't go back. You don't go back to where you were. You're with us. You're with us now. We're going to take care of you when the time comes. And eventually you're going to be one of us. Your children will one day be one of us. Don't wait. You know, that's what he said. And that was a welcoming. I was like, well, then I'm going to, you know, if the time comes, I know where I'm headed. Until then, I got to make the best. And I don't think it's coming anytime soon. I got to make do with what God gave me here. Go ahead, Aaron. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, if I may, I think part of the issue is, at least where Courtney and Wade seem to be coming from, is, you know, the supposition that they're coming from is that, you know, God gives these laws in the Torah, and they don't accept the rabbinical adjudication over all of Torah. So that if you don't accept rabbinic law along with the written law, then Noahide means second class. However, if you accept rabbinic law, it means different. It doesn't necessarily mean second class. It just means limited.
so yeah, limited second class.
Sure.
I mean, let's be frank. Let's just be frank with it. That's basically what's being done. Now, of course,
But
you don't have as many things binding on you, but you're also judged by someone either that they appoint, as Asher just said, or by the Jew himself. I mean, so
a tribunal as a Ger
right.
Toshav, I would have to go for.
And if a person is fully aware and fully understanding of what they're being called, how they're going to be treated, and the rules upon them, more power to you. That's fine. That's your choice. But as a person like myself, who I want to keep the commands of God, I want to be in covenant with God, I see nothing in the scriptures that deny me of joining into Israel.
No, I would agree.
So I guess that's my only thing. And even in Israel, so if, you know, I don't see how the Sanhedrin would ever be legitimate. I mean, even if you keep to the last Sanhedrin, I don't see how it could ever be legitimate. Anyways, let's say for some reason it does. I personally would not go because I think it's illegitimate. But nevertheless, let's say there is a governing system of Jews over the land of Israel. Again, if a person goes and they are aware of how they will be treated, what their rights are, what the rules are, just like in America, I'm not a person that's for anarchy. I understand that you're going to have laws, something that's going to govern a body of people. I get that. And if a person that is traveling through America from, like, let's say Mexico, they don't want to keep our laws, well, there's consequences. I understand that. I get that. Completely understand. But my point is being in covenant with God. Once there's that passion to be in covenant with God, I no longer feel like a person should be limited. And I think that's where Asher and I agree. Like, if a person wants to convert, they should be allowed to convert. You shouldn't make it hard on them. So I think that's the perspective I'm coming from, less of a perspective of, I don't accept rabbinic authority, or I don't, I'm being a rebel. I'm just saying, if a person wants to be a Noahide, more power to them. If a person wants to be in covenant, I think they should have more power to them as well.
So then any Israelite should be able to run into the Holy of Holies, if you will.
No, that's in Leviticus.
But
no, you can't do that.
So it's okay to be limited as an Israelite, but it's not okay to be limited as a non-Israelite.
It's within the Torah itself that limits for reasons of holiness.
Well, and that's also where the Noahide laws come into as well. It's the same
Right.
It's the
That's
same thing. It's limited based on, Kedusha, but it's not based on that individual's class. It's based on the fact that certain things carry a uncleanliness to them,
yeah.
and they have to be prevented from getting into contact with, the place where God dwells.
Right. And I understand that. And that's what I thought I just explained. Again, if a person is aware of everything that is going to befall on them, all of the rules, all of the blessings, etc., everything, more power to them. But if a person like myself says, no, I want to be in covenant with God, fully in covenant with God, there's nothing in the scriptures that says I have to be a Noahide if my blood dictates that I am not Jewish, which even now there's absolutely, no way to validate. I mean, everyone's a mutt nowadays. I'm not trying to be rude, but
The mutts. I'm a mutt.
so, I mean,
Let me. I want to stop everybody real quick right here because I want to end the live portion. PT Barnum, always leaving wanting more. Courtney, Carla, Will, Aaron, please stick around for the afterglow. That's when we bring out the dancing girls. No, I'm kidding. Actually, that's when we get deep and whatnot. And you're welcome to join the conversation. Please join the Orphans of Avraham on Facebook. We have an open room right here on Hangouts for as long as that lasts, at least through October. On behalf of Yochanan and Rosalie, who's not here, and Wade and Aaron and Courtney and Carla and Will and Stephen and myself and all those who aren't here, Shabbat Shalom, y'all. Be well.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbos.